Welcome to the organizational meeting on January 12th, 2021. Welcome, everyone. Roll call. Pledge allegiance. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Mr. Baldwin.
Here.
Mr. Bunning.
Here.
Mrs. French.
Here.
Mr. Hickman.
Here.
Mr. Swope.
Here.
I'd like to have nominations for president to
Mr.
serve as president during 2021.
Mr. Swope will nominate Vicki French.
Mr. Swope has nominated Vicki French. Any other nominations?
I'll second that.
There's a second.
Well,
Any
you'll
discussion?
just close nominations and then you'll
I
close.
close. Nominations are closed.
Nope, so number 3, we need somebody to motion to close.
Be it resolved that the nominations be closed for the president during 2021.
Swope will
Motion,
move.
please.
Swope will move. Bunning will
Second.
Bunning will second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Baldwin.
Yes.
Mr. Bunning.
Yes.
Mrs. French.
Yes.
Mr. Hickman.
Yes.
Mr. Swope.
Yes.
Nomination of vice president.
Oh, we got to vote on the president.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Election of the president.
So it will be election of president for Mrs. French.
Just need roll call.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Bunning.
Yes.
Mrs. French.
Yes.
Mr. Hickman.
Yes.
Mr. Swope.
Yes.
Mr. Baldwin.
Yes.
Nomination of vice president.
Mr. Swope will nominate Scott Bunning.
Scott Bunning. Any other nominations? Closing of nominations. Be it resolved that the nominations be closed for vice president during 2021. May I have a motion, please?
Swope will move.
Second.
Baldwin, second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. French.
Yes.
Mr. Hickman.
Yes.
Mr. Swope.
Yes.
Mr. Baldwin.
Yes.
Mr. Bunning.
Yes.
Election of vice president. Brian Swope
It would be for Bunning.
for Scott Bunting by Brian Swope. Thank you.
Woo.
Just need to vote.
Vote.
Mr. Hickman.
Yes.
Mr. Swope.
Yes.
Mr. Baldwin.
Yes.
Mr. Bunning.
Yes.
Mrs. French.
Yes. Set date, time, and place for regular meeting. Be it resolved to set the date. Suggestions, please.
We just want to do is keep it the same. Third
Third Thursday at
Third
Six.
Thursday
Third Thursday at 6
At
p.m.
at 6 o'clock.
Okay.
Okay.
So it'll be,
Will it be at the boardroom and the schools?
I would say that would be
Where-
up to Dr.
Contingent.
Baker.
If we're back to
Contingent
normal.
upon where we are with the virus.
Okay,
6 o'clock still good? Everybody?
6 o'clock, good?
All right, good deal.
And admin building or by schedule.
Motion, please.
Swope will move.
Second,
Bunning will second.
discussion. Roll call, please.
Mr. Swope.
Yes.
Mr. Baldwin.
Yes.
Mr. Bunning.
Yes.
Mrs. French.
Yes.
Mr. Hickman.
Yes.
Establish service fund. Be it resolved to establish service fund for board members, maximum of $20,000. May I have a motion, please?
Bunning will move.
Second,
Swope will second.
any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Baldwin.
Yes.
Mr. Bunning.
Yes.
Mrs. French.
Yes.
Mr. Hickman.
Yes.
Mr. Swope.
Yes.
Agenda for the regular meeting. Be it resolved to approve agenda for the regular board meetings. May I have a motion, please?
It would be this other page, guys.
Yeah,
that you have.
I think wait, swoop will move.
Bill Swift will move. Second,
Bunning will second.
any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Bunning,
Yes.
Mrs. French,
Yes.
Mr. Hickman,
Yes.
Mr. Swope,
Yes.
Mr. Baldwin.
Yes.
Investing of funds, be it resolved, the authorization be given for the treasurer to invest funds at the best available rates during the 2021 calendar year. Motion, please.
Swoop will move.
Second,
Hickman will second.
any discussion?
Yeah, they're not very good right now. There's not much out there.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. French,
Yes.
Mr. Hickman,
Yes.
Mr. Swope,
Yes.
Mr. Baldwin,
Yes.
Mr. Bunning.
Yes.
Interest distribution, approve the distribution of interest as follows. Interest will be distributed to the following funds based upon their end of the month cash balance: general fund, auxiliary funds, health fund, and dental fund. May I have a motion, please?
Just one correction, guys. Those are
What?
all now Park National Bank instead of Century.
Yeah.
Okay. Correction, not Century National Bank, but Park National Bank. Any other correction?
Is the Star Ohio, is that still that, or is it?
It's still there. Those are the two accounts through the treasurer of the state's office, which right now we might be better off to switch money back to that because, you know, when I first started, it was better than the bank rates. And then the banks, you know, as we went through a pretty good financial path there with the economy, you know, interest rates started going up. So the banks were ahead of Star Ohio at that point. So it might be beneficial to move some money back to Star Ohio because it's probably earning a little bit more money.
Sounds good to me.
Motion, please.
Swoop will move.
Second,
Hold on a second.
any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Hickman,
Yes.
Mr. Swope,
Yes.
Mr. Baldwin,
Yes.
Mr. Bunning,
Yes.
Mrs. French.
Yes. Advance in taxes, be it resolved, the authorization be given for the treasurer to request advances as needed from the county auditor for real estate and personnel taxes. Motion, please.
Bunning will move.
Second,
Swoop will second.
any discussion?
Okay, for this one, guys, we left it in there, but we haven't had an advance for a couple of years because the county is now generating the settlement much quicker. We left it in there in case they would have any software issues or things like that, that, you know, as they're collecting the taxes past the due date, we can request an advance if we need to.
Okay.
But we don't really use it anymore.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Swope,
Yes.
Mr. Baldwin,
Yes.
Mr. Bunning,
Yes.
Mrs. French,
Yes.
Mr. Hickman.
Yes.
Authorization to pay bills, be it resolved, the authorization be granted to the superintendent or his designee and treasurer to process and pay bills prior to board approval, to be submitted at the next regular meeting. May I have a motion, please?
Bunning will move.
Second,
Baldwin.
Baldwin second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Baldwin,
Yes.
Mr. Bunning,
Yes.
Mrs. French.
Yes.
Mr. Hickman,
Yes.
Mr. Swope.
Yes.
Yes. Calamity days, be it resolved that authorization be granted to the superintendent or his designee to declare calamity days as and when needed. Motion, please.
Swoop will move.
Second,
Hickman will second.
discussion.
Yeah, I got one question. With this being out during COVID, that doesn't affect anything calamity day wise? Or if we would take calamity days, was that shorten us to where we don't have enough hours in the classroom or anything like that?
No, you'd have enough hours, but right now what we're doing, if, let's say there's a forecast for 6 inches of snow tomorrow, and we knew that at noon today, and we were in traditional school. What I could do at that point in time with a remote learning plan is to declare that in advance, tomorrow is going to be a remote learning day, even though that's not scheduled, and we wouldn't have to have a snow day, or a calamity day for that. However, let's say at 4 in, we have an ice storm and wasn't, foreseen. Then I would call calamity day, and it'd be like the snow day that we would traditionally have. But we also have other things that we've had in the past where we had to call calamity days, like we've had gas line breaks, water main breaks, where we've had to call calamities
Okay.
in the past, in addition to just weather items.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Bunning,
Yes.
Mrs. French,
Yes.
Mr. Hickman,
Yes.
Mr. Swope,
Yes.
Mr. Baldwin.
Yes.
Emergency declaration. Be it resolved that the Zanesville Board of Education declare that the emergency requirements of the Zanesville City School District are for the current operating expenses. Motion, please.
Swope will move.
French will second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. French,
Yes.
Mr. Hickman,
Yes.
Mr. Swope,
Yes.
Mr. Baldwin,
Yes.
Mr. Bunning.
Yes.
Legislative liaison.
Okay, last year, guys, it was Mr. Baldwin.
Would you like to do that again, Mr. Baldwin?
Sure.
Okay. Be it resolved that Kyle Baldwin be appointed to serve as the legislative liaison during the calendar year 2021. May I have a motion, please?
Swope will move.
French will second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Hickman,
Yes.
Mr. Swope,
Yes.
Mr. Baldwin,
Yes.
Mr. Bunning,
Yes.
Mrs. French.
Yes. Student achievement.
Last year, it was Mrs. French.
Yes. Be it resolved that Mrs. French be appointed to serve as Student Achievement Liaison during the calendar year 2020. Motion, please.
Bunning will move.
Second.
Hickman second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Swope,
Yes.
Mr. Baldwin,
Yes.
Mr. Bunning,
Yes.
Mrs. French.
Yes.
Mr. Hickman,
Yes.
Bond coverage. Be it resolved to approve bond coverage, $20,000 each for the president of the board and the superintendent, and $50,000 for the treasurer. Motion, please.
Swope will move.
Second.
Baldwin second.
Discussion. Roll call, please.
Mr. Baldwin,
Yes.
Mr. Bunning,
Yes.
Mrs. French,
Yes.
Mr. Hickman,
Yes.
Mr. Swope.
Yes.
Audit committee. Be it resolved to appoint one administrator and 2 board members to serve on the audit committee.
Last year, it was myself, Mr. Hickman, and Mr. Swope.
I'll still do
That's
it.
fine.
Okay. So it would be the administrator,
It's-
Mr. Young, and the 2 board members are Mr. Hickman.
And Swope.
Okay. Motion, please.
Bunning will move.
Second.
Baldwin second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Bunning,
Yes.
Mrs. French,
Yes.
Mr. Hickman,
Yes.
Mr. Swope,
Yes.
Mr. Baldwin.
Yes.
Insurance representative. Be it resolved to appoint 1 board member to serve on the insurance committee.
It was Mr. Swope last year.
Mr. Swope, would you take that responsibility again?
Yes, I will.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Need a motion.
Oh, I'm sorry. Motion, please.
Bunning will move.
French will second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. French,
Yes.
Mr. Hickman,
Yes.
Mr. Swope,
Yes.
Mr. Baldwin,
Yes.
Mr. Bunning.
Yes.
Building and Grounds Committee. Be it resolved to appoint 2 board members to serve on the Building and Grounds Committee.
Last year was Mr. Bunning and Mr. Swope.
I'll still do it.
Okay,
I'll
Mr.
stay
Swope,
Yeah, I'll do it.
Mr. Bunn.
Yeah.
To serve on the Buildings and Grounds Committee. Motion, please.
Swope will move.
French will second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Hickman,
Yes.
Mr. Swope,
Yes.
Mr. Baldwin.
Yes.
Mr. Bunning,
Yes.
Mrs. French.
Yes. Business Advisory Council. Be it resolved to appoint 1 board member and to serve on the Business Advisory Council. May I,
It was Mr. Baldwin last year.
would you like to do that again, Mr. Ball?
Sure.
Okay. Motion, please.
Swope will move.
French will second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Swope,
Yes.
Mr. Baldwin,
Yes.
Mr. Bunning,
Yes.
Mrs. French.
Yes.
Mr. Hickman.
Yes.
Be it resolved that the organizational meeting of the Board of Education be adjourned. May I have a motion, please? Second,
Swope.
any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Baldwin,
Yes.
Mr. Bunning,
Yes.
Mrs. French,
Yes.
Mr. Hickman,
Yes.
Mr. Swope.
Yes.
That concludes our organizational meeting, and now we will go to,
Give me just a second here, Vicki.
okay.
Tell Jake where we cut off here. Okay.
Ready? Welcome to the Board of Education Special Regular Meeting on January 12th, 2021 at 6:30 at the Zanesville City School Administration Building. I'd like to call the meeting to order. We've said the pledge. Roll call, please.
Mr. Baldwin,
Here.
Mr. Bunning,
Yes. Here.
Mrs. French,
Yes.
Mr. Hickman,
Yes.
Mr. Swope.
Yes.
Introduction of, yes.
Mr. Foreman and Mr. Apple.
Hi, Mr. Foreman. Mr. Ackerman. ZEA presentations or comments? No comments?
I left Jeff's notes on my desk.
You want to go get them?
We can come back.
Student reports or updates?
I'll run and get him while he's going there.
What we could do.
Zanesville Community High School reports will be in
Yeah.
just a minute.
Yep.
Dr. Baker.
Want to bring to everybody's attention that January is School Board Member Recognition Month. And in front of you, you have a certificate of appreciation from the Ohio School Boards Association. In January, we'd like to honor our school board members. School board members exemplify local citizen control and decision-making in education. They volunteer hundreds of hours and an immeasurable amount of energy to ensure that our schools are providing the best education possible for the children of our community. For all their dedication, we are taking this opportunity to show them our appreciation during School Board Recognition Month. And we thank you for your service to the students and citizens of Zanesville City Schools. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Glad we can do it.
We'll now have the report of the Zanesville Community High School.
Okay.
Yeah,
Mr. Moore left some notes here. The current enrollment at the community high school is 122 with an additional 7 students still pending. 73 of those students are remote only with 48 in person and 4 additional students at Mideast. The exceptional education students totals 47. We currently have 10 students who have finished and are eligible to graduate and 7 others that are waiting on their test results. They will be starting back to the hybrid AB schedules on Tuesday, January 19th, and they're meeting and working on CTE technical career pathways programs for ZHS and for ZCS and ZCHS students. And they're looking forward to getting back in person on Tuesday.
okay, thank you very much. Approval of the minutes.
Swope will move.
Second,
Bunning will second.
any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Baldwin.
Yes.
Mr. Bunning.
Yes.
Mrs. French.
Yes.
Mr. Hickman.
Yes.
Mr. Swope.
Yes.
Report from the treasurer, Mr. Mike Young.
Okay, does anybody have any questions on the December reports or any of the community school information? I think we're starting to get caught up a little bit on some of the CARES grants and those types of things. One thing to bring you up to speed on, I had a conversation with Aaron Roush, who is the lead person at ODE with regards to budget and finance. We talked about things such as areas where we have lost revenue, so such as food service, latchkey, preschool, athletics, different things where people just have not been able to participate as much as normal. So we do have a pathway to help offset those losses with the federal grants. He also indicated to me that at some point here in the next few weeks, we will be given approximately 3.88 times the number of the funds that we were given on the first round. So this one is much larger for the schools across the country. So that's going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of $6 million. That's available to us with any expenses related to the pandemic. So some of the things, you'll talk about some extended remediation, some different things like that, purchase of buses, if that would be something that we could do maybe this spring. There's still some stock buses on the lots at the bus companies that we could get pretty quickly as we move back to getting kids back in person and hopefully getting out of red and at least getting those in-person kids 4 days a week.
And dependent upon if we could get some additional bus drivers, then that could reduce our length. We remember we moved from 1 mile to 1.5 miles. That may help us move that back closer to a mile.
So as of right now, we've got a few drivers, quote unquote, in the bullpen because we're doing that 1.5 miles. So there would be a couple drivers that will go back out on the road. But so those are some of the things that we'll be thinking about here in the next couple months as we get that confirmation as to what each school gets. He indicated to me that there's about 1.8 billion going to the actual school districts themselves, and it's all based on Title I allocations. And then the governor still has 200 million at his discretion to award, where he, and it may very well go more towards that broadband, those types of programs to try to help those rural areas that don't have internet access. But as we get more information, we'll let you know with regards to those.
Did you give any indication of when it would be?
President Trump signed it there right before New Year's. So it's just a matter of it working its way through, the United States Department of Ed and getting down to the states. Now, it shouldn't take them as long to get it up and processed because they've done it with the original CARES money. So I'm sure it will follow. I don't know, Steve, do you think it'll have a different USDA number?
Yes.
But it probably will be the same fund,
Right.
with a different cost center.
Right.
So it shouldn't take them a long time. It was sort of like the stimulus checks that everybody got individually. It took them a little bit of time to roll those out back in the spring, and it's, for people to get their $1,200 checks. This time it was much quicker because they basically had the database already in place to do that. So I would expect probably by the end of this month, I would think we will see it starting to be loaded up, and Mr. Foreman will work on the budget. We'll work on things and see what makes sense and get that processed, and then it's there.
I got a couple suggestions, Mike, for if it's what I think could be spent under what we're spending under at work is basically we got our 360 machines, adding more of those, stockpiling chemicals, stuff like that. They've got a shelf life of a couple, 3 years. Stockpile some of that because even though this CARES money might go away and COVID might be on the downturn, it's still going to be something. And that 360s are good against influenza and all those other types of things. Also, filtration systems on our HVAC units. You could put ultraviolet light systems in them. You can do all kinds of things with them now to kill bacteria and things like that. Also, they have UV robots that you can set in a room and you turn it on in 10 seconds. A flash of UV light kills everything bacteria-wise in those rooms. So those are types of things we might want to start looking at
to, if we're sitting here and saying the robots are rather expensive, they're like 20 grand, but one you could use in a whole school. And he just put it in a room at night, you walk, shut the door, turn it on, this thing pops up, flashes UV light around the room, it shuts itself off, and you're done. It's killed everything in there. It's like 100% effective. So those are the type of things we might want to look at doing, because even though COVID, this is going to be around forever. I mean, it just, even we get the vaccine, you're going to have like flu, but it also kills other types of things like influenza, things like that. So if we're looking for things to spend $6 million on, those are the types of things we might want to look at to do, to have further on down the road, looking further ahead, because those are some of the things that we're able to, and the federal is to spend money on, is those types of preventative measures. But the HVAC and the infiltration systems, with the UV light and all that, that's a big thing, killing bacteria before it even goes through the system. So just some suggestions, stuff we could look at.
And
Also, I would like to add, that's really a good idea, but I also would like to add, is there any way that we could have strictly online teachers instead of with those funds?
yes, so I believe
To take the load off of our
the
classroom teachers?
use dates are probably going to follow the first CARES Act, which expires September of 22. So I would assume that that'll be the first expiration date. Not that they won't extend that, but so we definitely have about 18 or 19 months left to spend this money. So we could be looking at things not only from the physical aspect, but also the instructional pieces as well. Expansion of programs that may or may not be covered, such as a 21st century. There's only so many seats there, but we could use this money to expand that, those types of things to.
Students that are behind
Right.
need help.
So there's a wide range of approved expenditures that you can use this money for.
Kind of like summer programs for catch up, and we can include meals and busing for that.
And basically the last item on the list is sort of a catch-all, which is what Aaron and I talked about last week with regards to these budget losses, the loss of revenue and food service, those types of things we talked about, the proper way to handle that. And that is really where that falls into, is that last item on the list. Then the other thing that I have on here is our it should be 21-22 budget in the heading there. So this is our budget for next year, beginning July 1st. Again, just as we did the forecast in November, this is not easy to be accurate, I guess is the best way to put it, with regards to, we don't know the state's budget for the next 2 years. That'll start coming out next month when the governor releases his preliminary budget expectations. And then of course the House and Senate will tweak it and present their budgets. The one thing that's hanging out there is a possible change in funding formula. The House passed the Cup-Patterson formula back in December, but the Senate did not act on it. So it will have to start from scratch in the legislature. So again, not knowing that, we're basically using the numbers we have. At some point, we'll get that cut back that we lost in May and again in July in the foundation money. Also, real estate taxes seem to be doing okay. I think we'll know a little bit more, obviously, come March when we see that first half settlement. But really, the estimates are the same. They're up a little bit once I got those from the county on Friday. So we're basically at a wait and see on the state budget. And if it heads in the direction that's anticipated, then we'll be okay. We're basically showing a loss right now because we don't know that. But I would fully expect that to be taken care of it once they release that. And then the last item that I have is just some appropriation adjustments. Now the ESSER funds, that's an additional grant that Steve received as part of a match. So that's the 507. And the large numbers in 21st century, the state changed the fund number. So instead of a 599 fund, it's now a 508 fund. 509, yep. So, so those are what most of those changes are. Those are just, once we see some increases in revenue or decreases, we go ahead and raise or lower the appropriations. And I guess the last piece of those auxiliary funds, those change based on the non-public schools, their enrollment. So they get paid, they get their revenue a quarter in November, or quarter in August, quarter in November, and half in February. So I'll have the final numbers next month when we get their final payment.
So there's two categories for 21st century.
That's taking it from a 599
You're taking
fund
it from a 599 to
to a 509. Yep.
Okay, gotcha. 509. May I have a motion to approve? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Squire Patton Balls, who is that? Is that Emily?
That is the attorney's, yes.
Any other question about for the treasurer? May I have a motion?
Swope will move.
Second,
Bonnie will second.
any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Bunning,
Yes.
Mrs. French,
Yes.
Mr. Hickman,
Yes.
Mr. Swope,
Yes.
Mr. Baldwin.
Yes.
Superintendent's recommendation,
Yeah, I think we
Dr.
have
Baker.
one adjustment. Item 9 needs to be changed from 6 days to 7 days. Is that correct, Kevin?
Yes.
So item 9, not to exceed 7 days as opposed to 6. So I wanted to bring that to your attention before we get going.
Not to exceed 7 days.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, item 1, resignation certificated. Approve the resignation of Catherine Haynes, intervention specialist, teacher at John McIntyre Elementary, effective May 31st of 21. Reason for the resignation is retirement.
Second,
Swope will second.
discussion, roll call, please.
Mrs. French.
Yes.
Mr. Hickman,
Yes.
Mr. Swope,
Yes.
Mr. Baldwin,
Yes.
Mr. Bunning.
Yes.
Item 2, employment certificated. Approve the following certificated personnel for the 2021 school year pending appropriate certification requirements and background check. And that would be Amber Cohagen, speech language pathologist at Zane Gray Elementary. It would be at step 0, effective January 25th of 21 in the amount of the MA category.
Motion, please.
Swope will move.
Second,
Hickman will second.
any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Hickman,
Yes.
Mr. Swope,
Yes.
Mr. Baldwin,
Yes.
Mr. Bunning,
Yes.
Mrs. French.
Yes.
Item 3, employment classified. Approve the employment of Brenda Grimmett, educational aide, one-on-one at National Road Elementary, effective January 19th of 21. Salary will be MD LPN aide, step 5 from the appropriate salary schedule, pending proper certification and background check.
Motion, please.
Bonnie will move.
French will second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Swope,
Yes.
Mr. Baldwin,
Yes.
Mr. Bunning,
Yes.
Mrs. French,
Yes.
Mr. Hickman.
Yes. Item 4, transfer classified. Approve the transfer of Joe Pollock, temporary head maintenance 1 at Zanesville Middle School to reflect the position of temporary head maintenance 1 at Zane Gray Elementary, pending background check. Step to remain the same, rate to reflect appropriate salary schedule.
Motion, please.
Swope will move.
French will second. Discussion?
Why is it temporary?
Fill in for someone that's
Somebody
out.
who's out.
Oh, okay, okay. And then they'll go back to,
Well, the one he's leaving is back,
okay,
and there's another one out.
okay.
Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Baldwin,
Yes.
Mr. Bunning,
Yes.
Mrs. French,
Yes.
Mr. Hickman,
Yes.
Mr. Swope.
Yes.
Item 5, salary adjustment certificated. Approve the following personnel as listed below to be granted salary adjustments effective with the current contract year for second semester only. Reason for the adjustment is due to having completed requirements for a new classification on the salary schedule by virtue of additional study pending receipt of official transcripts.
Motion, please.
Bonnie will move.
Second.
Swope will second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Bunning,
Yes.
Mrs. French,
Yes.
Mr. Hickman,
Yes.
Mr. Swope,
Yes.
Mr. Baldwin.
Yes.
Item 6, supplemental contracts. Approve the resignation of Robert Dalton, varsity wrestling coach, effective December 11th of 20. Reasons for the resignation is personal. Approve the resignation of Doug Baker, junior varsity wrestling coach, effective December 11th of 20. Reason for the resignation is personal. Approve the resignation of Riley McGee, Zanesville Middle School wrestling coach, effective December 11th of 20. Reason for the resignation is personal. Approve the resignation of Donald DJ Harris, Zanesville High School freshman boys basketball coach, effective December 17th of 20. Reason for the resignation is personal. And approve the resignation of Gregory Pete Hamilton, Zanesville High School assistant girls basketball coach, effective December 22nd of 20. Reason for the resignation is personal.
Motion, please.
Swope will move.
Second. French will second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. French,
Yes.
Mr. Hickman.
Yes.
Mr. Swope,
Yes.
Mr. Baldwin.
Yes.
Mr. Bunning.
Yes.
Item 7, retirement date adjustment certificated. Approve the retirement date adjustment of Annette Porter, teacher at Zanesville High School, from previously approved October 8th of 20 to reflect October 12th of 20.
This was due to us shifting the start of the school year back 2 days. The teachers would have normally reported on Thursday, I believe, August 20th. Instead, it started Monday, the 24th. So that was her cutoff for her actual retirement date.
Yeah, we discussed this last meeting.
Motion, please.
Swope will move.
Second.
Bonnie second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Hickman,
Yes.
Mr. Swope,
Yes.
Mr. Baldwin,
Yes.
Mr. Bunning,
Yes.
Mrs. French.
Yes.
Item 8, extended time certificated. Approve extended time for the individuals listed below for the 2021 school year. Rate of pay will be per diem rate as and when needed.
Motion, please.
Swope will move.
French will second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Swope,
Yes.
Mr. Baldwin,
Yes.
Mr. Bunning,
Yes.
Mrs. French.
Yes.
Mr. Hickman.
Yes. Item 9, extended time classified. Approve extended time for Jennifer Stewart, building secretary, for the 2021 school year, not to exceed 7 days. Rate of pay will be per diem as and when needed.
Motion, please.
Baldwin.
French will second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Baldwin,
Yes.
Mr. Bunning,
Yes.
Mrs. French,
Yes.
Mr. Hickman,
Yes.
Mr. Swope.
Yes.
Item 10, FMLA leave of absence. Approve an FMLA leave of absence for Alexandria Theodopoulos Plaster, teacher at Zanesville High School, effective December 17th of 20 to March 11th of 21. Also approve an FMLA leave of absence for Samantha Newton, teacher at National Road Elementary, effective January 4th of 21 to May 28th of 21.
Motion, please.
Bonnie will move.
Second.
Swope will second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Bunning,
Yes.
Mrs. French,
Yes.
Mr. Hickman,
Yes.
Mr. Swope,
Yes.
Mr. Baldwin.
Yes.
Item 11, leave of absence classified. Approve leave of absence for Carla Law, bus driver, effective November 16th of 20. Reasons for the absence is personal.
Motion, please.
Swope will move.
Second.
Hickman will second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. French,
Yes.
Mr. Hickman,
Yes.
Mr. Swope,
Yes.
Mr. Baldwin,
Yes.
Mr. Bunning,
Yes.
Item 12, volunteers. Approve the following volunteers listed below for Zanesville City Schools for the 2021 school year, pending appropriate background checks.
Motion. Second.
Swope will second.
Discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Hickman,
Yes.
Mr. Swope,
Yes.
Mr. Baldwin,
Yes.
Mr. Bunning,
Yes.
Mrs. French.
Yes.
Item 13, home instructor. Approve the following home instructor as listed as and when needed, pending appropriate certification and background check for the 2021 school year.
Motion, please.
Hickman will move.
French will second. Discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Swope,
No.
Mr. Baldwin,
Yes.
Mr. Bunning,
Yes.
Mrs. French,
Yes.
Mr. Hickman.
Yes. Item 14, employment substitutes. Approve the following substitutes as listed as and when needed, pending appropriate certification and background checks for the 2021 school year.
Motion, please.
Swope will move.
Second.
Bunning will second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Baldwin,
Yes.
Mr. Bunning,
Yes.
Mrs. French,
Yes.
Mr. Hickman,
Yes.
Mr. Swope.
Yes.
Item 15, donation of sick days. Approve the transfer of sick leave days from the following non-union members to Nancy Chapelier.
Motion, please.
Swope will move.
Second,
Bunning will second.
discussion?
Yeah. What's the difference between requested versus?
Okay, so what we did last month, because we didn't know exactly when Nancy was coming back to work. So both Michelle's offered 11 days. At the time, we needed 7 of them. So the 11 is what they've offered, but you can't add to your bank. You can only get yourself back to 0 when you donate the days. So we did the 7, that got us through. Well, she'll be back Tuesday, and so the remaining 4 gets her through to what she needed. So we didn't, if she would have come back like last Monday, then she wouldn't have needed these additional days.
Okay.
So we were just waiting for her to be released to come back to work.
Roll call?
Mr. Bunning,
Yes.
Mrs. French,
Yes.
Mr. Hickman,
Yes.
Mr. Swope,
Yes.
Mr. Baldwin.
Yes.
Item 16, athletic eligibility resolution. Approve a resolution to have students in grades 7 through 12 pass 4 one-credit courses or equivalent each quarter to be athletically eligible for the next quarter. That is, since we are already in the second quarter, pass 4 courses to be eligible for the third quarter, pass 4 courses in the third quarter to be eligible for the fourth quarter, and pass 4 courses in the fourth quarter to be eligible for the fall sports starting on the 21-22 school year. This will continue until the Ohio High School Athletic Association reinstates their original athletic eligibility rules. This will become effective immediately.
Motion, please.
Swope will move.
Second. French will second. Any discussion? Mr. Baldwin?
Yeah, I was looking through the draft
I have it here if you need to look at it.
and the last paragraph says something to the effect of discussion or formal actions held, and I'm assuming maybe this is the meeting that is open to the public as to discuss this thing, or has that already been done? Was that done in December when I wasn't here, or?
This would be the formal action where there could be a discussion.
Part of that discussion is that the public has comment, right? But they're not going to be able to?
They can comment. I've not received public comment. The one concern I had received was from a staff member as far as it being effective immediately as opposed for third quarter into fourth. One of the things that you have to keep in mind was for second quarter, the first 5 weeks of second quarter, students were under the 5 credits to pass. And then on December 11th, the Ohio High School Athletic Association made the decision to waive for the eligibility for scholarship for the remainder of the school year, but with, again, the caveat, but local boards can take the action that they would want to take. Our board at the last board meeting requested a resolution be put together for this board meeting where there could be comment, outside, I suppose.
And we haven't received?
Just the one that I had was the being that was just thworried that it's for the current, it would be effective immediately as opposed to being effective for the third quarter into the fourth quarter.
Any other comments or discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. French,
Yes.
Mr. Hickman,
Yes.
Mr. Swope,
Yes.
Mr. Baldwin,
Yes.
Mr. Bunning.
Yes.
Item 17, Ohio School Boards Association Legal Assistance Fund. Be it resolved to join the OSBA Legal Assistant Fund, whereas the Zanesville Board of Education wishes to support the efforts of other boards of education to obtain favorable judicial decisions. And whereas the Ohio School Boards Association Legal Assistance Fund has been established for this purpose, therefore the board hereby resolves to participate in the OSBA LAF for calendar year 21 and authorizes the treasurer to pay the LAF $250.
Motion, please.
Swope will move.
Second.
Monahan, second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Hickman,
Yes.
Mr. Swope,
Yes.
Mr. Baldwin,
Yes.
Mr. Bunning,
Yes.
Mrs. French.
Yes.
Item 18, issuance and sale of bonds. Approve a resolution providing for the issuance and sale of bonds in a maximum aggregate principal amount of $7,850,000 for the purpose of refunding at a lower interest cost certain of the school district's outstanding school improvement refunding bonds, Series 2012, dated May 16, 2012, authorizing the call for optional redemption for refunding bonds, authorizing the execution and delivery of a bond register agreement and a bond purchase agreement with respect to refunding bonds, and an escrow agreement with respect to refunding of the refunded bonds, and authorizing the preparation, use, and distribution of official statement relating thereto.
Okay, so Mr. Baldwin and Mr. Hickman, you weren't here when we did the last refunding in the summer of 2019. Basically, what this is refunding in our world of bonds is refinancing your debt. So this is the second time that each set of bonds has been refunded since we began the building project back in 2002 when the levy was passed. You've got a certain time period. Once you get there, you have the opportunity to refund them and resell them at a lower interest rate than what you're currently paying. So the bonds we did in 2019 saved taxpayers approximately $850,000. This one is not as lucrative, but it is going to save about $400,000. So all told, for the decade of the 2020s, all debt will be paid off in 2029. So for the 2020s, we'll save taxpayers, $1.25 million in interest over the next 10 years. Basically, the 2019 bonds are paid off in 2024. So on these, we'll have small principal amounts until 2024, and then the principal amounts will ramp up on these in 25, so that they're paid off also in 29. So one set, the 2019 bonds will be paid off in 24. The 2021 bonds will be paid off in 29 as they currently are set to be. It'll just change the principal and interest payments, in those latter years of the notes. So
Will we have to go through the same procedure?
No. David Conley is our financial advisor with regards to our bonds and our debt from Rockmill, along with Emily Cannon, who used to be with David. She's at PNC Bank. So she will be the actual person presenting the bonds for sale. And then, of course, we have legal counsel with Squire Patton and Boggs. In 2019, in the summertime, myself, Dr. Baker, and Mr. Curry went to Chicago for our bond rating, to keep our rating, to be able to get those better interest rates. They feel like we can just do the mid-cycle review over the phone. Our financial position is a little bit better than it was back then. Even our delinquent taxes are down a little bit. So we don't feel like there'll be any issue, just having a phone conference call with them and answering their questions. We do piggyback on the state of Ohio's rating. So, that helps. It gets you one step higher than what your own personal rating would be. So whole process, I think I sent you guys the timeline, or I put the timeline in the docs. So we would have this completely finished sometime here as we, come into spring. They'll get the paperwork. I'll start sending them the items tomorrow. The resolution from tonight, different things I need to sign on. And at that point, they'll start the process. But like I said, it's just sort of like refinancing your house.
Motion, please.
Swope will move.
Second.
Baldwin, second.
Baldwin, second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Swope,
Yes.
Mr. Baldwin,
Yes.
Mr. Bunning,
Yes.
Mrs. French,
Yes.
Mr. Hickman.
Yes.
Any recommendations from the superintendent?
We do have a report discussion item with Mr. Appleman.
Thank you. Mrs.
This is Wheeler, sorry. I think he's saying I was not able to be here tonight. So in front of you, there's a packet, there's a color code, little grid. This is information that is required by the USDA. Information guidelines and procedures must be held upon in order for us to get our reimbursements back. The graph in front of you is administrative review. The next one due is in 2021 and 22. As you can see on the green, on the far right column, it says yes. That means that we have made sure that we have the right amount of green and red vegetables that are supposed to be offered to the student. So each year we have to meet that and go through that process, make sure kids are getting fed correctly. Also, it makes us in compliant in the requirements that are considered for the USDA. The other requirement, other packet that you have there is guidelines and everything we have to follow for the food. And there's also what's called a snack funds and beverage in Ohio schools, which is on the back page. We have to also follow those to provide any snacks that we have available for the students, which range in the sugars, the salts, the trans fats. We have to just make sure that we follow those. We're feeding the kids properly. Any questions on that? I would like to say that the week before we left for Christmas and this last 2 weeks, our drivers and cooks, they've been taking food out to all of our students. We're preparing them in the schools and getting them ready. The drivers also, we've been having them help. We've assigned them each building to go and pack everything. We probably, 800 to 1,000 each day, is that about right? So, and the first one we started out was kind of slow, but we've increased it. So they are working very hard to do that, and that's what we want them to do, to be assigned at a building, make sure they are helping us to get food out to those students.
So what's the average that you're feeding?
When we were on break, well, not break, it's called,
Yeah.
we're remote, anywhere between 800 to 1,000. So it fluctuates back and forth. It all depends on, we had 8 buses out in areas, and then on the website, we sent out one call to tell those areas and locations where the pickups would be. We had to adjust some of those because some areas were probably not in a safe area, and we did that. There's even some of them where we go up into the areas and knock on doors too, that some people have done, just to make sure the kids can come out and get their food. So we work very hard with that.
Thank you very much. Any updates from the committees?
Auditors finished up today here,
Okay,
so they'll be working on their reports and we'll have everything filed by the end of the month. So once they do that, Mr. Hickman and Mr. Swope will probably have a quick exit conference. So we'll try to obviously work around your schedules and we can get them down here and meet real quick to go over what they've got. But they should all be filed by the end of the month. Now it'll take a process to be reviewed at the Auditor State's office. So them filing it at the end of the month, I would say it wouldn't be available on the Auditor State's website till sometime late February, would be my guess.
Thanks.
when's the next business advisory?
January 26th. And it'll probably be done in a remote fashion.
Remote,
We'll have the opportunity to come in person, but we'll also do it remote.
you'll have remote, good. Any closing comments? We would like to have an executive session. Whereas the Board of Education and other governmental bodies are required by statute to take official action and to conduct all deliberations upon official business only in open meetings unless the subject matter is specifically exempted by law. Whereas the minutes need only reflect the general subject matter of the discussions in executive session. And whereas the members of the public body may hold an executive session only at a regular or special meeting for the sole purpose of consideration of any of the matters set forth below. Now therefore be it resolved under the provisions of ORC 121.2 8:22, the board hereby enters into executive session for the reason herein stated, for negotiations. We are entering at
6:55.
6:55.
Need a motion.
I need a motion to go into executive session.
Swope will move.
Second,
Bunning will second.
roll call, please.
Mr. Baldwin,
Yes.
Mr. Bunning,
Yes.
Mrs. French,
Yes.
Mr. Hickman,
Yes.
Mr. Swope.
Yes.
Okay, so we're
We're back in
at
at
7:30, 7:35.
May I have a motion for adjournment?
Swope will move.
May I have a second?
Bonnie will second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Bunning,
Yes.
Mrs. French,
Yes,
Mr. Hickman,
Yes.
Mr. Swope.
Yes.
Mr. Baldwin.
Yes.
we are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Jake.